found myself over the years becoming more willing to check out a series when it first debuts and watch its progress as time passes. Back in April 2021, I found a series that had one of the weirdest first chapters I've read in recent memory, yet even so, that didn't stop me from reading any further. In fact, it made me so invested in the series that I've kept up with it every week to see its growth along the way as it shapes itself to being a top prospect among the current slate of manga today. Yukinobu Tatsu has something in the works that feels like it's destined to become a huge success in the near future, that future being a lot sooner than later. Its potential is looking undeniable, and if handled in the same manner as it was in its debut year, we could be looking at not just the next Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen, or Kimetsu no Yaiba, but the first Dandadan. So I'm here today to tell you why Dandadan is the series everyone should be reading. Let's go. 2021 saw a ton of new series come to life and make a name for themselves as future stars of the anime and manga industry, some of which I've talked about before on the channel in the past year or so, as well as with my previous videos talking about the new series to look out for, and it's only right that I do the same with Dandadan. The more time I've spent with it, the more I'm convinced that this was the best new manga that I've read that came out in 2021. Normally I would wait at least another year would pass before reflecting on such comments, but I don't need to question the facts that are shown from what this series has done so far. So to understand why I'm choosing to talk about Dandadan now, let me tell you what this series is all about. Dandadan tells a supernatural coming-of-age story between a boy and a girl who initially compete to determine the existence of either spirits or aliens. After an encounter with the unknown causes them to awaken newfound powers, their lives become connected as they attempt to fix the surreal sci-fi elements around them to return to a normal life. While it may come across as a very bizarre story, and trust me, it fits all the criteria to be the new definition of bizarre, I mean, look at this guy for example. When you dive into the first chapter to see what this series entails, you'd be surprised with how engaging it is. While there are a number of factors that come into play for all of this, the sole deciding factor for me came down to our two main characters representing the heart and soul of this series for why it stands out so well, Momo and Okarun. At the beginning, these two are complete polar opposites, both in their beliefs and social standings. Momo, the lead heroine, is viewed as a hot-headed delinquent, whereas Okarun is a nerd fascinated with the paranormal. After being dumped by her first boyfriend, Momo transitions her attention towards Okarun, leading to a conversation about the abnormal. To see which of their beliefs and oddities exist, they make a bet to find out which one of their myths are real. Momo would traverse through an abandoned hospital, while Okarun would go through a tunnel that was infamous for a series of murders. During this time, Momo reveals to Okarun about her upbringing with her grandmother, the bullying she endured because of a spirit ritual that she would perform every day at her school at her grandmother's request. Things began to take a turn for the worse with their relationship when the boy that she liked would start making fun of her, copying the same pose as Momo, and we will get to said boy in due time. Despite the resentment Momo felt towards her grandmother, it upset her whenever she would hear others slander her grandmother. It was then that Momo realized that it wasn't the boy she liked that didn't like her, it was that he made fun of her grandmother that bothered Momo to her core. Having grew up without any parents, all Momo had in her life was her grandmother, so even if ghosts weren't real, Momo's grandmother and her work as a spirit medium felt unique and special to Momo, and that is more than enough to believe in the person who raised her as the woman that she's become today. And after getting that touching backstory from Momo, the atmosphere transitions completely into a scene that doesn't feel real at all. Sure, this series is what it's advertised to be, a supernatural horror story that lightens the air with elements of comedy and romance, and yet when the page turns to focus on what's staring Okarun dead in the face, you can't help but think to yourself, things have gotten really fucking weird. Okarun runs into a deity known as Turbo Granny and is forced to retreat from his search. Having failed to escape its clutches, his fate is up in the air from Momo's perspective. Meanwhile, Momo is confronted by the Serporians, a race of aliens that hail from the planet Serpo. Momo gets captured by them, and for reasons that involve protecting the channel from getting smoked, I cannot show you the full details of what's going on here because, look, if you want to know for yourself, go read it. Just as when things are about to look grim for Momo and her banana organ, I really don't know how to explain it any further, but just stick with me here. Help is on the way as Okarun comes to Momo's rescue after being cursed by the Turbo Granny, submerging with it to don a new appearance. As he fights back against the aliens, before they proceed to turn the tides onto our main lead, Okarun is faced with a non-negotiable option: surrender your banana organ, to which Okarun has no problem giving up if it means the safety of Momo. He's willing to put himself at risk to protect her because she was the only one to acknowledge his existence. Okarun's interest in aliens stems from him trying to make friends with them after being bullied a lot growing up, and unable to build bonds with his own humankind. Yet just like with humans, his prayers were never answered and his place in the world was shunned in the shadows. That moment when Momo came to his aid when he was being bullied meant the world to him, and if anything were to happen to the person that saved him, he would make them regret it. It's in this moment that Momo begins to remember something her grandmother once said in regards to her chi, as by releasing it, no evil would come near her. As Momo begins to visualize her chi, she awakens her newfound powers as a psychic and unleashes an ass whooping that was long overdue on the alien invaders. Momo has now obtained the strength needed to defend herself and sends the banana organ wancer straight out of the UFO that they were trapped inside. Despite overcoming the aliens, Okarun was still possessed by Turbo Granny, who demands that if the boy wishes to get back his schlong, they must come to the tunnel to which Okarun found her in the first place. Momo and Okarun have now accepted the existence of aliens and ghosts. As the two talk to one another, half naked while walking along an empty road, Okarun says something that makes Momo's heart flutter. I am an awkward fellow after all. To provide context, you remember when I said Momo had a boyfriend at the start before she was dumped? The reason she was with him is because he bore a striking resemblance to the legendary actor Ken Takakura, aka her celebrity crush. The line that Okarun said is the same one back in a 1984 TV commercial for life insurance where he famously said, I am an awkward guy. Momo, caught off guard by this, asks Okarun for his name, to which leads to the first of many moments where this series would take my breath away with its storytelling and use of art to hit home the key moments Yukinobu Tatsu sets up and brings to life. Ken Takakura. And with that, the look on Momo's face changes. Her heart begins to waver. She has finally met the one whose name she's been infatuated with for a long time. Or so we thought. From there, the story sees the two engage on expeditions against the supernatural, doing what they can to prevent them from causing any harm to their planet. While it's assumed to feel like a monster of the week type of story, that isn't the case. There are times where they repel their adversaries from causing any further harm, and then you have it to where in some events they befriend those that were once their enemy. Take what happened with Turbo Granny for example. They started off as our first main antagonist in the story, being a thorn in our main duo's backside as they tried to do everything to retrieve Okarun's manhood. Towards the end of the whole chase around the city, which saw Momo using her craftiness to defeat Turbo Granny and freeing the spirits of those she possessed to attack Momo and Okarun, it's through Seiko, Momo's grandma, that we actually see the Turbo Granny for who they are. Despite being a legendary yokai who was fused with a bound spirit inside the tunnel Okarun found her in, they were not responsible for the murders that took place in that tunnel that claimed the lives of many girls around the same age as Momo. Instead, they would act as a motherly figure who would console the spirits of the dead before passing on to the afterlife. This would change Momo's view on Turbo Granny and see them in a different light. They'd have their moments when they're at each other's throats, but the hostility isn't like what it was until the end of the first arc, eventually leading to Turbo becoming a supporting character throughout the series in an effort to retrieve Okarun's missing balls. Yeah, more stuff happens, but look, we're done talking about his nuts. I should also comment that within the first arc of the series, it illustrated really well the sequence of action and movements of Tatsu's art, something of which I view as one of their biggest strengths as an artist when it comes to depicting what is going on in every panel, from casual talk to hands being thrown. And it's not just the choreography of the fights that shine primarily, but in the downtime with the cast and understanding how each character operates. The first 8 to 9 chapters gave off this feeling that we are bound to see something special from Tatsu that would cement their place as the author to recognize as the cream of the crop of new gen mangaka. And here's the thing, Tatsu managed to solidify that potential being a real thing in the Acrobatic Silky arc, the second entry in the story. This is the arc I felt changed my views on Dandadan from this seems weird but interesting to this might be the one. Following the battle with Turbo Granny, Momo and Okarun find themselves having to search for the latter's missing balls after Turbo Granny had stolen and lost them before her defeat. In the midst of their search, the two are confronted by another yokai known as Acrobatic Silky, who is after Aira Shiratori, a girl from their school who is in possession of one of Okarun's balls. Among the characters who work alongside Okarun and Momo, Aira's transition from foe to neutral to a friend, as well as her role in this arc, is one of my favorite storylines in Dandadan. Much of her growth comes after this arc, but here is where we see another side of her that shows that she is much more than the snobby, arrogant bully that she was when we first met her. And for us to get that part of Aira's character, that would come with her connection to the Acrobatic Silky yokai. Ever since she was a kid, Aira was able to see a woman in a red dress whom she mistaken for her dead mother. Thinking about it as a one-time encounter, the Acrobatic Silky would watch over her throughout her life. Upon acquiring one of Okarun's balls and being able to see Momo's powers as a spirit user, Ira makes it her mission to expose Momo as a devil. During her struggle with her rival, Ira is captured by the Acrobatic Silky, happy that the day had finally come where she could see her after stalking her for many years. Momo and Okarun do their best to neutralize the Acrobatic Silky. However, in the process of trying to eliminate her, Ira was killed. While Ira was able to see yokai, she did not possess any spiritual power to protect herself against them, and when Acro Silky consumed Ira, she died in the process. As Momo and Okarun do everything in their power to revive their classmate, they are offered a chance to do just that, with the help of Acro Silky providing her life force to bring Ira back from the dead. Momo didn't trust Acro, and for good reason, giving her demeanor during the fight. Yet the lady in the red dress proceeded to tear away her own jaw to keep her oath intact, as giving up her life to save Ira meant more to her than her greed. As Momo engages with Acro Silky to execute the transfer, she gets a glimpse into the past of the yokai. Chapters 16 and 17 of Dandadan are, in my opinion, the best back-to-back chapters in the series so far, and it's mainly because of what occurred here involving the two central characters of this arc, Ira and Acro Silky. In her past life, Acro was a single mother who worked multiple jobs, which included prostitution, to provide a secure life with her daughter. She had an interest in ballet dancing, something that passed on to her daughter, and she worked hard to earn money to afford a dress for her, in hopes that maybe one day she can help create a dream for her daughter to go after, away from the tough life that they lived. When the men she owed money to invaded her home and took away her daughter, Acro's reason to live was gone. Left in the rain, covered in blood, she had decided that without her daughter, her life wasn't worth living. In an act to apologize for failing to protect her daughter, Acro performs a dance in the rain on top of a roof, reminiscing on the time she spent with her daughter before leaping into the air to meet her end at the bottom. This backstory proceeds to bleed further into Acro's descent into becoming a yokai. Acro stumbled upon a young Ira who mistakes Acro for a deceased mother. It was at this moment that Acro proceeds to create this delusion that Ira was her daughter and swore to watch over her until the day Ira is able to see her. Yet just when that reality had manifested for a few moments, the embers of Acro's life begin to fade. When the process of transferring one's spiritual energy takes place, their aura to resurrect someone, the transfer relinquishes their life in exchange. And due to having regrets from her past life in this realm, she will not be able to move on to the afterlife, thus becoming nothingness and having their existence completely erased. In the case of most yokai, when they die, they can venture to either heaven or hell, but in Acro's case, her regrets are the reason she has no rights to choose where she will pass on to. Acro's heart was filled with all the regrets from her past life. A person harboring those emotions in their moment of death can never achieve nirvana. As Acro wallows away in her sorrows, never able to forgive herself for failing to be a good mother for her daughter, there was someone who was able to forgive her instead, to acknowledge her efforts despite them ending in vain. That person is Ira Shiratori. To ensure that Acro can pass on peacefully and reach nirvana, Ira embraces Acro, which leads into the stretch of pages that honestly had me shedding tears when I read this chapter for the first time. When you see Acro and her daughter sitting on a hill, watching the shooting stars fall from the sky, a time where they were truly at peace, Ira goes on to relay a message to Acro as if it was her actual daughter saying this to her mother, telling her that she loved her and that she was the happiest in the whole universe. The double spreads that follow up offer both an emotional yet comforting feeling that everything is going to be alright. Even just talking about it, I feel the same way I did when I first read chapter 17. This was such a beautiful send-off for Acro into the afterlife and a big moment for Ira to show that she does in fact have a heart. And while she does retain part of her personality from when we met her, she's slowly opening up to changing how she acts towards others, showing that the effect which Acrobatic Silky had on Ira will hope to have a positive influence towards her becoming a better person. This moment in the story was so powerful, and to have something like that happen within the first 17 chapters of the manga was very impressive from Tatsu, as it showcased that even with us only knowing these characters for not that long, they've left an impact that will be remembered for quite some time. Dandadan by this point not only had my attention, but added to my belief that it's destined to be a major player in the manga industry for years to come. It has so much going for it, and it finds ways to keep readers interested no matter what is going on. Whether it's a story that's being told from Tatsu, as he's been steadily stepping up in that department with each arc that passes, fighting the Loch Ness Monster, just goofing off during a period of relaxation, to fighting a cult responsible for the destruction of families for over 200 years, to swearing an oath to fight a friend who harbors a demon inside him with underwear as the peace offering. Yes, this series is really out there, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. And speaking of the owner of said underwear, I wouldn't feel right leaving this character out, as he's another favorite of mine in the series who helps out with Okarun's development as a character. That person being Gigi, aka the boy who Momo had a crush on when they were kids. While he comes across as this class clown joker who rattles most people that he interacts with, when he first debuted, I figured he was someone that Okarun would have to overcome as Momo's love interest. Yet during the events of the haunted house arc, my opinion on him drastically changed. At the time, Okarun viewed Gigi as a rival when it came to winning Momo's heart. It made him sick to his stomach that his own shortcomings are the gulf that separates someone like him with someone like Gigi. Okarun was so fixated on trying to be a better man than Gigi that he almost lost sight of something important that he would get from the latter. That would be his respect. We've known for a while that Okarun's only friend has been Momo since their first encounter, yet it's his bond with Gigi that helps shape his character for the better in the later stages of the story. Fascinated with his knowledge of the occult, Gigi begins to build a connection with Okarun, who feels guilty of his early remarks and views on Gigi from earlier. They slowly start to become more open with each other, even playing some football together. For the sake of my mental health, I won't rip into him for being a PSG fan, but I do hope he finds a better team to support soon. When Gigi gets ensnared by the evil eye, the one responsible for his family being in the hospital and seeking out Seiko to help him, he gets a glimpse into the past of the yokai from when it was a human. Seeing its last moments of imprisonment, the terrible condition its body was left in by his captors, and the atrocities it witnessed as a yokai, kids being sacrificed inside the Tsuchinoko house, Gigi came to feel sorry for the evil eye. To extend this sign of friendship that it longed for, Gigi offers to play with the evil eye. This would lead to the two merging and the evil eye using Gigi as its host. To jump forward a bit in time, after the events of the haunted house arc, Gigi has now become a vessel for the evil eye. However, his control of the yokai is limited, and it gets even worse when he activates his transformation when cold water touches him. Because of an incident that saw Momo in grave danger, Okarun is determined to do everything he can to stand up to the evil eye to help his new friend, something of which Okarun was never able to do before he met Gigi. After his training arc with Turbo Granny and Ira at the school to match the rhythm of the evil eye, Okarun challenges the yokai to a fight. As the battle rages on, the difference in power is visible. Okarun is now able to match the evil eye in combat. Using a bit of mind games, Okarun is able to convince the evil eye to fight him once a week to quench his desires, thus helping free Gigi from its control. His goal in all of this was to be the evil eye's friend, the same thing Gigi was trying to do to help remove the regrets that plagued the yokai's existence. Seeing this determination from Gigi, declaring his intentions to make the evil eye his friend and free it from its pain, this will be a huge moment of growth for Okarun as a character. He went from putting aside a rivalry to learn more about the one he was competing against, and during the time he realized that he doesn't see anything negative about him. Okarun knows how important Momo is to him, and now he holds that same feeling with Gigi too. He's now become someone who's willing to put everything on the line to protect those he cherishes, whether it means living or dying. It was better than accepting his weaknesses and not doing anything about his problems. So I can safely say that Gigi ended up being the best possible thing that could have happened to Okarun. Dandadan has a lot of appeal at its beck, and it's not hard to see why. The art is great, and I'm gonna say it many times of it being a visual pleaser when Tatsu goes in with the pen, especially to magnify how chilling it can get whenever the horror aspect of the series comes into play. It's so unsettling and downright built to scare anybody at any given time, which I can say adds to the appeal of this supernatural story that is surrounded by the abnormal that does its job. And when the big moments in the story take place, no matter if it's a single or a double page, you feel Tatsu's art speak to you with its paneling, presentation, and execution of those moments. On top of the other things that makes this series so engaging is even when things can get dark, the comedy helps add a nice balance. The facial expressions and the mannerisms, along with how the characters express themselves while acting like fools, make it genuinely hilarious. Like for example, when Peeny Weeny is searching for a source of blood to keep him alive, he requires milk as it's what his species runs off of. So what do the normal people of planet Earth do to help him out? Let's give this guy a fucking cow and beam the thing up to his UFO. Stuff like this have me so dumbfounded that I can't help but laugh at how ridiculous this is, yet it totally fits within the confinements of this series. Henceforth, it's bizarre but accurate to a T. Whenever Dandadan does get an anime, the voice acting selections are going to be a key factor in bringing its comedy as well as other aspects to life. Another part that I've mentioned in bits earlier in the video is how great the characters are, and they honestly are the reason this series would perform as well as it has in its duration. mission. The side casts have added their share of greatness in the story. Even if things are primarily focused on our main duo, they find themselves in positions to not only stay relevant, but connect with them and see how they tackle their own issues at hand. And from my perspective, the main axis of what makes Dandadan amazing is whenever Okarun and Momo are together. Sure, at the beginning they live in two different worlds, but as they spend more time with each other, they come to understand one another a little better with each arc, going from strangers to friends, the things that make them strong along with the weaknesses that they want to overcome to be able to be good enough to stand by each other's side. And you would think that this story would see them just only become friends. Nope. Over the course of the story, Momo and Okarun start to feel something for the other. As we progress with each chapter, they begin to form a bond that is strong and genuine, seeing them not only just being great friends, but something further than that developing between them. They have moments where they find themselves battling their feelings and how to act on them, sometimes leading to misunderstandings or facing hurdles that they're not used to going up against. Momo and Okarun want to be the best version of themselves for each other, as most relationships are meant to go through these kind of ordeals that test them to see if they can be close friends and something more. And the way Tatsu has handled their relationship even during the current stretch of the story has been a joy to watch. I believe I've talked quite enough, so why don't I save the rest of my thoughts on the series for the weekly experience? That's right, I'm adding Dandadan to my lineup as the newest series I'll be covering on the channel. I decided that instead of tweeting every week that Dandadan is the GOAT, why don't I go ahead and do that every single Monday when the latest chapters come out on Viz. It's been arguably one of my favorite new series as of late, and it ticks all the boxes for what I enjoy in a manga these days. And now that I've found that in the form of Dandadan that does all those things that I've mentioned earlier, it's time to bring awareness to a series that I honestly believe can go from being a rising star to a pillar of this new generation of manga. Yukinobu Tatsu does in fact have something special in the works, and if he's able to continue with this trajectory of putting out greatness week in and week out, there is no question in my mind that Dandadan will go on to be recognized as an elite manga for years to come. If you're interested in seeing me talk about Dandadan on a weekly basis, you know what to do already. Subscribe to the channel and take part in myself putting respect on Yukinobu's up and coming new hit series. Like the video if you enjoyed, and be sure to leave your thoughts about the series in the comments. How are you enjoying Dandadan so far, and do you believe it has a chance of being a household name in the years to come? And with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video. Commodore last signing off. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care.